Traveling between the south and eastern points of the Minneapolis-St. Paul metro area today involves driving Interstates 35E and 494. The latter route crosses the Mississippi River via the Dakota Bridge, a structure built in the late 60s and rebuilt as it presently stands in 2010. Before that, traffic between the cities of St. Paul and Hastings crossed the river via the Rock Island Swing Bridge. This combination automotive and railroad bridge opened in 1895, became a toll bridge until 1938, continued to carry traffic after the freeway boom in the 60s, and even reverted to toll operation after the 1980 bankruptcy of its owner, the Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific Railroad. The bridge closed in 2003 after 2 decades of operation as a private toll bridge, having not seen trains since 1980. Today, the site of the bridge is under county ownership as parkland along the Mississippi River, serving residents and travelers with a unique repurposing of an already storied place on the river. Welcome to Swing Bridge Park. Dakota County and the city of Inver Grove Heights cooperatively developed the park along the right-of-way of the former county road leading to the bridge. A parking lot, information posting area, picnic grounds, restroom, bicycle repair station, as well as landscaped garden patches add convenience and reinforce the natural features of the site. The project is an example of the outdoor tourism industry's notable presence in the upper Mississippi River Valley. Providing a trail stop at a site already marked by auto tourists of a time gone by is a great way of preserving useful infrastructure in meaningful ways for more people, as well as their pets. While the placement of parks at sites of historic development is nothing new, Swing Bridge Park might be the first in Minnesota designed with a specific nod to infrastructure history. The approach to the river bridge is dotted with interpretive displays meant to create a historical character in the bridge, almost as if one could never truly be alone visiting this park. The bridge and its behemoth components are ever present in the spirit of this site. To either side of the walking path is an identical view that John Dillinger was reputed to have seen, crossing the bridge after a heist on the opposite shore at some unspecific time early in the lifespan of this approach as a major state highway crossing. Moreover is the rail approach embankment that traces the road high above, the two modes sharing the history of this site. The length of the approach was ideal for accepting long lines of cars awaiting crossings, as well as long trains, while the swinging span would have opened for riverboat traffic. But rail traffic ran in tandem, via a top deck outfitted with wooden ties, 1 track above, 1.5 official lanes of vehicle traffic below. When the Rock Island Railroad sought to sell the bridge, Joan and Al Roman of Chicago sought to buy the bridge and reopen its toll booth, making it one of only a few such bridges in Minnesota, let alone a privately owned structure carrying a state highway. But for the company known as JAR Bridge, it was adjusted in the legislature in 1981. Down this road would have been where that very toll booth would have sat. While built to accommodate trains crossing to the West Bank for slaughterhouse access, the rail line's focus also changed late in its existence. Marathon Oil to this date operates a large petroleum refinery on the East Bank, and the bridge could be used as a switch onto the Union Pacific Spine line for trains of the time. Ultimately, the bridge's maintenance costs combined with unpaid taxes forced the JAR Bridge into receivership in 2003. Washington and Dakota counties sought plans to remove the bridge, which were undertaken in 2008, culminating with the reopened bridge segment and park having opened in 2010. There is no public boat launch at the site, but in all other aspects, the modern park is draped in suburban utility, with mystic river ambiance. This park tends to be well attended throughout the calendar, already taking on the history of the locals it serves. For the period after the bridge closed, the site was high on the list of adventurous teenagers and similarly bored adults. Fires were known to be set by trespassers. The center swinging span remained in place, open for 5 years, but known to be closed on rare occasions by county officials. Community voices pooled together to raise awareness of the reverence carried by locals for the bridge. A deconstruction process followed by a reconstruction process modernized the bridge into an extended pier with modern safety conveniences like adequate railing and solid floors, along with the installation of a prefabricated bridge span extending out to several rehabilitated approach span structures that ride atop the Mississippi. Though lacking above is the character of the support structure for the railroad that would have cut the light levels for cars below during crossings. This is the part of the Mississippi River where the Mark Twain, Tom Sawyer, Huck Finn character really starts to exude. The new approach bridge is narrower yet than the functionally obsolete bridge structures with the head. The Marathon oil refinery on the East Bank is now serviced by both BNSF and Canadian Pacific lines that run along the East Bank sides. The West Bank sees less Union Pacific traffic on its shores, but the marina is always fairly busy this time of year. The idea of the commonality of such a narrow crossing as part of one's routine is really a thing of wonder. Where the prefabricated bridge ends, the rehabilitated 1895 structure begins, with the bridge's stalwart foundational pilings accommodating both the old and the new structures as one in the new pier. The remaining original steel structure supports only a wooden deck and pedestrians now, whereas it had previously held a concrete deck for automobiles and freight trains atop the structure. The side supports are now made of metal rather than wood. The bridge carries all of its traffic at a low level, not far from the river's surface, especially during spring swells. Compared to modern highway bridges, traffic would have closely traced the river as a part of everyday life. The Mississippi River Valley begins to widen after St. Paul. Crossing the river at this point offers no distant bluffs to connect, but rather communities on the riverbanks that were, in the heyday of the bridge, self-sufficient and less tied to access to either of the twin cities upstream. After the Dakota Bridge was constructed to carry Interstate 494, the swing bridge was used as a local access crossing between the suburbs of Inver Grove Heights and Newport, and likely as a diversion from freeway traffic. The community had a sizable contingent of friends of the bridge who continued to push both counties for inclusion of the old bridge structure in future plans for the site. They were even empathetic to the rehabilitation of the bridge for some form of traffic. But the U.S. Coast Guard objected on the grounds of the swinging center structure posing a navigational hazard. The old swing span would have been maintained to allow for cars and trains to cross the river, with traffic stopping at a signal and likely some form of gate at this, the transition from approach to what would have been the center swing span when riverboats needed to pass. Long barges could make for long lineups of cars on the approach spans. Past drivers would have existed here, amidst the Mississippi as parkgoers do today. Arguably, a modification of plans might have allowed for the integration of a new structure here that could have allowed a complete crossing of the river to foot and bike traffic. In a way, the park is more of a eulogy to the bridge's final decade. More of a stub end than a way forward. The East Bank approach spans were the first to be removed. The Marathon Refinery had maintained private control of the East Bank roadways after September 11, 2001, and residential traffic in Newport has since been re-engineered to pass east of the refinery. With private land so abundant, a complete new crossing can be only accomplished via imagination, or memories, for an ever-dwindling few. That this much metal has remained in place above water in the Rust Belt after having been under private control for most of its life is astounding. The success of Swing Bridge Park is really its incorporation of everything it surrounds. You genuinely want to spend time there and be close to identifiable aspects of a complex blend of histories. Just the fact that a public space extends onto the Mississippi makes this a really unique place. With this rail crossing of the Mississippi closed, trains continue north to nearly downtown St. Paul before the next crossing to join the main lines on either bank. But today, the necessity of such train movements is mitigated by logistical advancements. Most modern railroad operations lie exclusive to yards on either bank, with less industrial crossovers taking place via rail access than via intermodal services across the Twin Cities. At this point, the rail trestle would have loomed over cars as they veered right. Aside from cleanup of the railroad right-of-way, the embankment remains as it would have been for trains decades before. A climb up the stairs finds one among a variety of prairie plant species that have spread up the embankment. Standing atop the embankment, one understands the necessity for elevation, given the tendency for the river to flood in springtime. Both railroads and regional trails benefit from elevation as the bridge was designed for. Whether at a time when life and the places people traveled closely trace the river, or at a time when going to the river changed into something solely done in spare time. This kind of reuse project seems to be rare among public works projects in the U.S. Old infrastructure requiring rehabilitation and upkeep isn't typically favored by governments. While this park only generates a meager amount in usage fees compared to its initial project costs, the reward is in the community cohesion it creates. Aside from annual inspections, the park is mostly self-sufficient, requiring only visitors to interpret its history in each their own way. The bridge, while never able to be considered a roadside attraction in its time, now becomes some version of that for trailgoers. The trail atop the embankment continues down the Mississippi River along a system of trails maintained by Dakota County, with all but one section completed on the route to Hastings, Minnesota. The trail also continues north, close to the alignment of Union Pacific's spine line as it terminates in downtown St. Paul. The west bank of the Mississippi affords hikers and cyclists the most direct route toward St. Paul. The river trail inbound to the cities connects to the famed Grand Rounds Trail circuit throughout the Twin Cities. Branching trails, many created as Rails to Trails reuse projects, afford hikers and cyclists a variety of destinations across the upper Midwest. Destinations in all directions abound, with sites such as Swing Bridge Park tempting travelers in all forms of transportation with a unique resting point to relax in serenity and history. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more bridge and travel content. Until the next bridge, keep wandering and keep collecting stories.